Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald Trump has just won the biggest deal ever in this trade war, and this was set to benefit America for generations. And what are the details of this deal? What has he won? And what will be implication to the stock market? Let's watch on all the way to the end. So President Donald Trump has won the biggest deal ever in a resort in Scotland, and now the stock market and US is set to go to the moon. As usual, these content are not financial advice and they are for education entertainment only. Remember to hit subscribe for more update. Tonight we do have something surprising around 8:30, 9 o'clock. Please remember join us as we bring you something special from a co-room. So US and EU agree on a 15% tariff, and this averted a transatlantic trade war. And this sweeping deal was sealed in Scotland. And President Donald Trump somehow managed to get the EU Commissioner Ursula to double down with her team to his resort in Scotland to seal this deal. So the US EU deal that was clinched in a ballroom at Donald Trump's golf resort in Scotland has been criticized by business leaders in Germany and France, but this deal will impose a 15% tariff on almost all European export to the US, including cars, and ended a possibility of a 30% punitive tariff being imposed that is due on the 1st of August. But this was well apart from the 0 import and export tariff that the EU offered initially. This means that European exporters to US will now face more than triple the amount, which is about 4.8% right now, and it goes all the way to 15%. And the steel imports are still facing a 50% tariff and a question mark over what will happen to a pharmaceutical export. But clearly, this is a big, major win for the US, and I don't know what to say, but Donald Trump is just an amazing negotiator. And in this deal, the EU will agree to purchase $750 billion of energy. EU also agreed to invest $600 billion more than what was planned, okay, in the US as well. The EU will replace Russian gas with the purchase of energy from US with the purchase of $250 billion per year for the next 3 years. So this deal not only benefit the Donald Trump's government and his country, but will also now bring down the amount of money that Russia will receive, and hopefully that will cripple Russia's economy and they'll back down from the war that is waging on Ukraine. So Trump also said that the steel and aluminium will continue to be subjected to a 50% tariff, and this is something that clearly the EU doesn't like. So this happens after weeks of tense negotiation between the top trade official. The EU and the US has finally struck this framework deal, and it comes at the eve of America's latest tariff talk with China. Ultimately, it took the leaders from both EU and US to sit down face to face to reach this agreement. And clearly this has been done, this was done with EU bowing down and caving in and giving in to Donald Trump. I mean, you think about it this way. This deal was signed, okay, or rather agreed on in Donald Trump's home ground, which is in Scotland's golf course. So clearly, the officials on EU really know that they are not at a bargaining advantage. The Trump administration is celebrating this as a big win, and in many ways, it is a big win. Now, the press crafted in such a way that this is not a total defeat for the EU President Ursula, but it is a big loss in many ways. So clearly, it is not a fair deal, and let's have to accept it. However, you have to take it that that actually EU already imposed a lot of tariffs, especially their infamous VAT on all imports. So in that sense, their VAT is already in the 19 to 22%. So I think it's just leveling up as well. Now, this deal has been criticized by German business leaders and French minister. And the French minister actually said that a bloc of free nations, caving in to a bully, right? So I think this is something that EU don't like. The German chancellor said that signing this deal avoids the needless escalation and potentially, avoided a potentially damaging trade war. Clearly the German exporters were not happy, but you know what? They don't have a choice, right? They don't have a choice. What could they do? Is either accept a 15% or or they get a worse deal. The United States is the biggest auto market for German cars. They don't have a choice. Now it is very clear who needs who more. So it is also clear that the US tariff of 15% on automotive products will place a burden on German automotive companies in the midst of their transformation, hitting sales and profit, but they don't have a choice. Ireland, one of the top exporter to US, said on Sunday that bring the signing of this deal would certainly bring a measure of much needed certainty, but it regrets the baseline tariff. So in short, they're not happy about a deal, but they have no choice to sign a deal. The French Minister for Europe said that the agreement provides temporary stability but is unbalanced. Okay, the German bank said that the deal brings an end to the crippling uncertainty, but is a victory for Trump. So it's great to have a deal in two major aspects. However, the outcome remains much worse than the situation before Trump starts its new rounds of tariff war early this year. Now, everyone knows EU is in a worse off position. Trump has won. But the EU has rather have this deal than to have something worse. The deal is asymmetric, right? One party wins versus the other. The US gets away with substantial increase in tariff on imports from the EU and secured further US concession to boot. So Trump can claim that as a win for him, right? So the Germans are not happy. The Italian bank also said that Trump has got the better out of EU. Is this a good deal for the EU? Probably not. The outcome is heavily asymmetrical and it leaves the US tariff on imported EU at much higher levels than the EU tariff on imports from the US. So clearly, all across the board, every country across the EU are now crying father, crying mother that this is a worse outcome for EU, but they don't have a choice. Well, you know what? The European stock market hit a 4-month high at the start of the trading. So that's despite all the grumbling and all the unfair deals that were signed. The stock market hit a record high. The German DAX jumped by almost 1%, and the French index also jumped by more than 1%. So the clear thing is this: both sides try to play hardball. Both sides, try to push the other side and say that we are prepared to fight and fight and fight. But the EU finally cave in because they don't want to receive a worse outcome. So meanwhile, let's take a look at the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq. The futures market right now looks on another record high. So congratulations to all who holding on to their US position, and the Nasdaq also hold on to a record high. I can see all my portfolios now hitting record high and high and high again. And I'll have some words to say about this later in my wrap up. So meanwhile, the biggest and most important deal, okay, is currently right now in progress. US and China are now talking, okay, at Stockholm on the trade tariffs, and we don't know what the outcome will be. I think China don't want a trade war, and US also know that China has negotiation leverage. So these two parties, the outcome will be quite interesting to see what they will come up with. So China and US are talking tariff right now, and hopes are rising that the truce that between them will last. We don't need them to come to an agreement. We just don't need them to go into further war in that sense, right? If they delay for 90 days, 180 days, 3 years, whatsoever, that's also a good outcome. So the key takeaway is this: I won't bet against the US market. I don't know why there are so many people that come out and say that this is the end of the US reign, this is the end of the US exceptionalism, the US dollar gonna crash, the US is gonna die, the US this, the US that, no, China is gonna go up, the rest of the world is going to go up. Wake up your mind. I think I would like to quote Warren Buffett 2 years ago. He says this, okay? Warren Buffett says, never bet against United America. And he said that in a letter, and I truly believe that that is right. Anyone who has gone to the US, have stayed some time in the US, I will certainly realize what I've realized in my stay in US. I've discovered this. There is no society like US that able to absorb the innovativeness of the world, the cream of the crop from the whole world, and that's going to be something very difficult to rival. So the US and the US government certainly will benefit tremendously from this Trump tariff for generations. Okay, I didn't say that the whole world will benefit. I just said that the US and US government will benefit from this victory for generations. The US government, even if Trump after Trump's leave, the next president, whoever comes from which party, will keep most of this tariff because it potentially now will save US from that bubble that's growing non-stop. So the world right now awaits the US China negotiation outcome. Okay, and this will be the final line to cross. I will just say this, we should diversify, okay, from US. That means not 100% asset into US, but to bet against the US, meaning that, you bet against the US by not putting a single cent into US, or pare down your US and just bet almost an entirety into, I don't know, China, Europe, Singapore, Malaysia. I think it will not be wise. On this note, on Singapore, there's a lot of people who sing praises about Singapore. And I'm not saying no, no, Singapore is a wonderful place. I just say this, right? Our HDB is in Singapore, our CPF is in Singapore, our jobs are in Singapore, our livelihood in Singapore. Okay. You still want to put every of your investment in Singapore, right? Singapore, to be fair, it's a very, very small speck in the world of investment asset, right? If you calculate the total investment value of the world versus what is our Singapore stock market, or even some of our bonds inside, we will just be a small speck. So I think, it'll be wisdom to have some diversification from Singapore. And this is not a pledge of disloyal, but this is a pledge of wisdom, right? So I think this is really very important. Okay. So I think there is more excitement to come. Tonight we'll go live around 8 o'clock or so. So do join us as we bring you the next exciting part of the market. Okay. I'll see you and have a good day.